Hey guys, back 40 Outdoors here. Today I'm going to tell you guys the story of Podcast, a 151-inch Ohio 10-pointer. Clean 10-pointer, only 2 and 1/8 inch of deductions. But before we get into the story, I would like to give a shout out to Drop Tine Apparel. Not sure if you guys can see the antlers here, but that's their logo. Drop Tine Apparel makes quality outdoor apparel. I'm a really picky guy when it comes to my flannels, and this is one of the nicest flannels I've ever worn. It's quality. They make t-shirts, long sleeves, sweatshirts. They have coolers, they have cutting board. They have a whole bunch of stuff. Go over to Drop Tine Apparel, check them out. Use code BACK40 for 10% off. The B in back is capitalized, and then it's just the number 40. Anyways, let's get into it. So, Podcast actually have his antlers right here. Podcast, 151 inches with 2 and 1/8 inch of deductions. He's 19 inches wide. Carries his mass almost all the way through. I mean, really good all the way through. He's got some cool curvature to his points. Just an awesome buck in general. Wish his beams wrapped a little bit more, but you could critique every deer you shoot. Something I've learned. Anyways, so we'll jump into his story. So Podcast showed up August 27th this past summer. I haven't had any history of him whatsoever. I actually, leading up to this year, I put tons of work in over the summer to try and kill a buck that I call Twin Towers. I think he got hit by a car because he was big enough. I actually have a video on my channel just about his whole story, but he was big enough that if he would have got shot, I would have heard about him. I knew enough people in the area, I definitely would have heard about him. His home range was right next to a super busy highway, so I think, unfortunately, he probably got hit. But so this deer shows up August 27th, and immediately just back of my mind, just because the very next day, Twin Towers showed up for the first time in 6 or 7 months. So that's where my mind immediately went. This buck automatically was my number 2 going into the season. So typically, as most of you probably know, deer, about the middle of September, after they shed their velvet and everything, they switch to their fall range. They switch from their summer range, which is normally where the soybeans are, where they're bedding, all that stuff, and they go to their fall range where they're going to rut and everything. So this deer, August 27th, shows up, don't see him again. So November 11th rolls around and he shows back up, but 1.5 miles away from where I got the first pictures of him. He shows up at 9:45 at night. I'm like, all right, I can work with this, But again, I'm still chasing the buck, Twin Towers, which also hasn't shown up since the day after I got the picture of this guy, which was August 28th. So I'm going around door knocking, putting cameras everywhere that I get permission to, just trying to get a lead on this deer. So Twin Towers every year, late season, would show back up. So once December came around and we started getting some snow on the ground, I switched my efforts back to the spot that Twin Towers always comes back to. So fast forward to the beginning of January. I've got no pictures of any nice bucks. So I haven't hunted in probably 2.5 months, which, it probably wasn't the best idea because deer come through different places, different days, do one thing different throughout their day, and they end up somewhere else. I should have been hunting, but I just wasn't. I just couldn't motivate myself to hunt. I viewed it as wasting my time, which is a terrible way to look at it because anytime you're in the woods, you're learning something, and you guys get it. So beginning of January, lacrosse season starts. My coach, it's optional, but neither is playing time. You guys know the drill. So I take my mind off hunting, and I'm gearing up for lacrosse season and getting everything, ready. And January the 11th, I think it was, I get a trail camera picture of podcast in my late season spot where I typically got the pictures of Twin Towers. So immediately I'm like, you know what, it's time to hunt this deer. So we were getting a really big cold snap, and podcast had been showing up just at midnight like 2 or 3 times a week. I figured if I'm going to kill him, or I'm going to kill Twin Towers, it's going to be, this week. So that Monday, it got down to like the single digits with the wind chill, like -2, -3. And then it was progressively going to get colder that week. So I could hunt Monday. I couldn't hunt Tuesday because I had lacrosse. I could hunt Wednesday, couldn't hunt Thursday because lacrosse. And I could hunt Friday, and then I could hunt that weekend. But it was going to warm up for the weekend, so I figured, that 5-day stretch was going to be it. So Monday, I go in there, and I see a wide 8-pointer that it was within 5 minutes of legal shooting light, and I almost mistaken him as a shooter. Glad I didn't let him walk. Saw some does that night too. Tuesday, like I said, I had lacrosse. Wednesday, I go in there, and the 8-pointer comes back in, chase some does around, eating some corn, some other small bucks. Thursday, I was supposed to have lacrosse, but I was like, I need to be in the woods. I can miss one day of lacrosse. So I missed lacrosse that Thursday. Go in there, and I see 2 deer. I see a fawn and an adult doe. I'm like, well, that's pretty discouraging. So that Friday, we ended up actually having a cold day, so I didn't have school. But I didn't have enough time to get up that morning and go out. And this time of year in Ohio, the mornings aren't really any good anyway. So in my eyes, plus there's nothing there in my corn pile. So in my eyes, it was kind of good that I didn't go out that morning. Didn't stink the area up or anything for that evening. And I knew that for that evening, I needed to get in earlier at least. I was getting in at like 3:30 every day. I knew I needed to be in my stand by 3. I ended up getting in at like 2:35, and within an hour and a half, so like 4 o'clock, I had 11 does come in from a big 30-acre, what was a soybean field, a big 30-acre field. They come in, and all week the wind had been terrible, but I knew that I needed to hunt. So they come in 17-mile-an-hour winds out of the northwest, which is just terrible for my spot. And the does get 40 yards from me, and they start going like this. They wind me. They don't snort, but you could tell they knew something wasn't right, and they took off back where they came from. So about 45 minutes later, this is where this deer gets his name. So I was listening to a podcast on my way to the spot I was hunting, and in the podcast, they talked about how when they hunt, they have an earbud in. They keep it really low so the deer can't hear or whatever. They just have an earbud in. So I was like, what the heck? I'll take my earbuds with me. I've never done this before. So I put one earbud in my left ear. All the deer typically come from my right. To my left is 40 yards is just a giant ravine. Really deep, really steep, and really far across. So they typically don't come from that way, but I had it like barely could make out what the people were saying. I was listening to Seaboys TV Life Wide Open podcast actually, and I hear a twig snap. I kind of look with my eyes first, and then I tilt my head slowly, and all I see is just this. So I'm thinking, oh, it's the wide 8-pointer that I've seen twice this week. I always keep my bow ready and everything. So he works his way in to like 65 yards, and then he sees a deer out in the field and turns his head like this. I'm like, yeah, that's not the 125-inch 8-pointer. That's a buck I'm in here after. So he ends up working his way into 40 and stops and starts checking the wind. And I'm like, oh man, he's gonna smell me as soon as he gets to 35. The first chance I get, I'm gonna kill him. So he gets to 35 and he's walking behind trees. Then he starts to walk away from me. Then makes his way back to me. Gets to 30, gets behind some trees. Still, I'm like, the second I get the chance, I'm gonna let an arrow fly. He gets 30 yards from me, behind some trees, and he's walking towards my corn. I'm like, still, I don't want to take any chances. First chance I get, I'm shooting him. He gets one step from like a 4-foot opening. I'm like, all right, I'll stop him in this opening and I'll shoot. So he gets one step from the opening. I go, Meh. And sure enough, doesn't stop, keeps walking, and stops one step too late with his vitals behind a tree. The first thing that I said to myself was, you blew it. Like, he's heard you. He already knows that, something probably isn't right with the wind. He's going to run. So I put my bow, I put my sights on his butt, thinking that he's going to do a 180, look around, and then dart. And the second he does that 180, just hope that, I'm on his vitals. He never does a 180. Keeps walking to the corn, gets right behind a tree, and still vitals behind a tree. He takes one step and takes another one, and then another one, and opens up his vitals for me. I shoot. You know the sound that, I'm sure most of you know the sound. You can tell pretty soon whether it was a good hit or not. I hear the thunk sound. He takes off, went 35 yards, and died right on the lip of that big ravine, and then rolled all the way down, or slid all the way down because we had some snow. Slid all the way down the ravine. It was, in the moment, you're not thinking, oh man, now I got to pull the deer up. You're thinking, oh my gosh, I just killed the biggest buck of my life. But, so, I call my dad up, let him know. He comes out, and sure enough, right at the bottom of that ravine, my biggest buck to date, podcast 151 and 7/8 inches. So thank you guys for listening to, or actually watching this video. I appreciate you guys for sticking around until the end. As always, please like, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff. I know I probably sound pretty redundant at this point, but it would really help me out a lot. Trying to get some more sponsorships and stuff here in the future. Gonna try and get a better camera. I'm actually filming this with my phone right now, and put out some quality content for you guys. Turkey season's right around the corner, so thank you guys for watching. As always, like, subscribe, all that stuff.